Show respect, step back, no need for space invasion. Stop saying your room number at the day's end. Let the girl dance, that's really all she came for. $1 million dress probably came from the thrift store. Even though she seems to be exactly what you wish for, she's never coming in on your transistor. Don't matter if you're rich or piss poor, she's out of your league and in a different sport. The answer is no, you ain't got a chance. She's out of your league, just let the girl dance. No creeping allowed though, you just get a glance. Don't try to swing game, yo, just let the girl dance. The answer is no, you ain't got a chance. She's out of your league, just let the girl dance. You can watch her soul flow from a distance, but give her some bass on, let the girl dance.
Hey everybody, here at Slot Rods, we're getting ready for race day. But before we get started, we wanted to say something first.
YouTube has different milestones you have to cross before their algorithm will expose you to a larger audience. And we've met all the criteria but one.
We need about 50 more subscribers to hit our first milestone. So please, if you've been watching, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and hit that little bell.
And tell people about Slot Rods by sharing us on your social media. Thanks, folks. And now, on with the show.
Hey everybody, I'm Randy Silvis.
And I'm Tony Mollick.
Welcome back to Slot Rods, and welcome to the conclusion of our Mother's Day Massacre.
Man, I still ain't too sure about that title.
Too late, homie. This is your second episode.
We have a batch of new cars being added to the competition for Heat number 2.
And we couldn't keep out some of the sorest losers from Heat 1.
Well, we're going to reduce this pack down to one car, and that one car will face our winner from Heat number 1.
And that winner is, from the 724, the 57 Chevy called Ruby.
So let's get it done. Round 1, race 1. The Bird versus the Heretic.
The Bird flew away from the Heretic, but the Heretic passed the Bird about the halfway point. And came around on the big end for the win, giving the Heretic his first win of the night.
Round 1, race 2, teammates from the 412, Mr. Brown versus Blue Bayou.
They both got out to a good start. That Corvette stretched out that truck, and Mr. Brown gets his first win of the night.
Race 3, the Harry Olds versus Bob.
Ready? Go. Bob got the jump. The Harry Olds must be a turbo car, because about the halfway point, he came around Bob and took him with the miles per hour.
And the Harry Olds gets his first win of the night. Race number 4, my little SOB versus Keith Bean in the Integrity Farms RT.
Corvette took the RT off the light and managed to stay ahead for the win.
And the SOB puts one on the board.
Round 1, race 5, 412 teammates, 911 versus Mini-Me.
Always sucks when you draw a teammate.
And it's even worse when you cross center and crash into one.
911 cross center and Mini-Me rear-ended 911, causing the Porsche to careen off the cliff.
You see in slow motion, the Porsche gets out of its lane, gets smacked in the back bumper, and straight over the hillside.
Yeah, hope everything's okay.
I'm sure he'll be fine. And so will Mini-Me with his first win of the night.
Round 1, race 6, McMullet versus the Batmobile.
Now that's a drag race.
McMullet managed to come around me and take me by about a half a car at the finish line.
Round 1, race 7, the CUDA named Frankenberry versus the 59 Stingray called Prince. Dude, that was such a perfect start.
They were still side by side at camera 2.
But Frankenberry took the win in the last 600 feet.
Up next, Randy and his Mustang he calls Cobra versus the Trans Am called Flamethrower.
I took him off the line and out 60-footed him.
And you were still ahead of him at camera 2.
Yeah, but that TA squeezed around me right at the finish line.
Giving Flamethrower his first win of the night. And now our last race of the round, Fireball versus the Eliminator.
Man, that Fireball Camaro is fast off the line.
And he also got squirrely about halfway down the track. And then he hit the power supply for camera 3.
But he didn't cross center and managed to slide across the finish line on his nose to win by a nose.
That Eliminator was almost around him, but the Fireball manages to get the win.
Giving us a leaderboard that looks like this.
Heat 2, round 2.
Round 2, race 1. SOB versus the Flamethrower. That was all SOB from the moment the light come on, brother. That Stingray's running excellent. And that gives SOB his second win.
Round 2, race 2. Blue Bayou versus Bob. And again, teammates come off the line in sync.
Bob started to creep ahead about the halfway point.
And takes Blue Bayou by 2 car lengths.
And that gives Bob his first win of the night.
Round 2, race 3, the Eliminator versus the Heretic.
Even more 412 on 412 crime. Woohoo, that Eliminator took off quick.
Heretic was all over the track, then crossed center behind the Eliminator.
Putting the Eliminator on the board.
Round 2, race 4, McMullet versus Cobra, the rematch.
I was sleeping at the light and McMullet took full advantage of me.
Insert inappropriate Bill Cosby reference here.
And insert second win for McMullet here.
Round 2, race 5, Rob Trumpy in the 1970 CUDA called Frankenberry versus Keith Bean in the Integrity Farms RT.
It's Mopar madness. Keith got out first and was still leading at about the halfway point, and
something happened to the CUDA, and it lost power, giving the RT his first win.
round 2, race 6, Camaro called the Fireball versus the TA called the Bird.
No man from the diaphragm, the Bird.
I'll just let you do that one from now on.
And again, that Fireball's first off the line. And he put the spread on Keith and took him by a mule train.
Giving Fireball his second win.
Round 2, race 7, My Little Batmobile versus Mr. Brown.
This ought to be a good race. Couple of Corvettes. Looks like Mr. Brown got you off the line.
And then he crossed. Was it before or after the finish line?
Way before.
Way before.
He crossed the finish line first in your lane. And that gives the Batmobile his first win.
Round 2, race 8, 412 teammates, the Harry Olds and 911.
911 sure looks good after that catastrophic crash over the cliff.
Oh man.
And 911 narrowly avoids another catastrophic crash.
The Harry Olds come off the line and immediately lost his passenger side rear wheel.
Oh yeah, you can see it here. He immediately lost a wheel and it shot him into a half circle.
And fortunately, the only thing that went over the edge was the wheel and tire. And that gives 911 a win.
Round 2, race 9, Prince versus Mini-Me.
Mini-Me was out first, but Prince managed to wrestle his way ahead and accelerate past him for the win.
Only 3 cars that won in round 1 managed to pull off a win in round 2. The SOB, McMullet, and the Fireball Camaro.
Round 3, race 1, the Eliminator versus Mr. Brown. And this has been a lot of teammates racing teammates today.
Yep. The Eliminator stole a hit.
He was still ahead of camera too.
And held him off till the finish line, putting the Eliminator in the 2-win club.
Round 3, race 2, Mini-Me versus
The Bird. Bird got off the line first by just a hair and looked to be putting the spread on Mini-Me by the halfway point.
whoo, and that came around him in the last 20 feet. Look, in slow motion, she clipped his wings right at the finish.
Are you sure?
According to this photograph, very sure.
Mini-Me for the win, giving her a second win, and that's enough to keep her in the competition.
Round 3, race 3, 412 teammates yet again. McMullet versus Blue Bayou.
Yep.
Mikey just blew Brian right off the starting line, and there was no way he was catching that Camaro.
Which makes McMullet the first to 3.
Round 3, race 4, another teammates race. Keith Bean in Integrity Farms RT versus Randy Silvis in the Cobra.
Hold on. You good, Brian? Okay.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to happen. And Integrity Farms gets their second win.
Round 3, race 5, we have the Fireball Camaro versus the Stingray called Prince.
That's a hell of a drag race.
Unfortunately, there was no finish line camera for this race, and it was one of our closest races.
We had to resort to using a long-distance close-up from camera 1 to try and determine a winner.
Man, that's tough to tell, even in slow motion.
Okay, let's break it down into still frames.
Looks like Prince was pulling away.
But it looks like the Fireball was trying to come around. But then his rear tire come off the ground, and that let Prince get out ahead of him again.
And again, the Fireball is trying to come back around me. And here we are, right about at the finish line.
We drew a line at the finish line, from the Fireball's back tire to the Stingray's back tire. And given the direction of that line, we have to give the win to Prince, which keeps Prince alive, and Fireball does as well, having both 2 wins.
Round 3, race 6, SOB versus Frankenberry.
Apparently, we were still waiting on the finish line camera to get fixed.
SOB was out on Frankenberry at the halfway point and managed to hang on for the win.
And got that all-important third win.
Round 3, race 7, Batmobile versus 911.
Batmobile took that race by a considerable margin. And that keeps the Batmobile alive with 2 wins. Round 3, race 8. It should have been Flamethrower versus Bob, but Bob couldn't make the starting line. And that gives Flamethrower the free win, keeping him alive with 2 wins.
4-1-2 teammates, the Heretic versus the Harry Olds.
I'm going. We go, driver's ready. Rob Trumpy was fast asleep at the line, and Brian Kane took full advantage of him. He won that race by 2 school buses, and that keeps the Harry Olds alive with 2 wins.
The Heretic, Mr. Brown, Frankenberry, Bob, and 911 are all eliminated from competition with only 1 win.
SOB and McMullet both have 3 wins, and the winners of the races between the rest of the competition will determine who moves on.
The RT had a catastrophic gear failure, and he couldn't continue, which gave us an uneven amount of racers.
And rather than having someone draw a bye, the racers drew a wild card at random from the losers.
And Mr. Brown drew the lucky chip.
Elimination round.
Our first elimination race is between the Harry Olds in the left lane and Mini-Me in the right.
Looks like they came off the line perfect.
But the Harry Olds was pulling away at the halfway point.
And holds Mini-Me off for the win, which eliminates Mini-Me and puts the Harry Olds in the 3-win column.
Next, Flamethrower in the left lane and Mr. Brown in the right.
A Pontiac versus Chevy race.
Another perfect start. And Mr. Brown was still ahead at the halfway mark.
And here comes Mr. Brown crossing center right before the finish line.
Which eliminates our wild card and moves the Flamethrower into the 3-win column.
Up next, the Batmobile from the 724 and the Eliminator from the 412. And another great drag race.
It was a dead heat at the 8th mile.
But Batmobile pulls ahead in the last 200 feet and takes the race by half a car, placing the Batmobile in the 3-win column.
Which brings us to Prince versus Fireball. However, all the footage from that race was lost.
However, Fireball did manage to win the race and becomes the last car to move into the 3-win column.
Which means now it's a shootout to the last man standing.
First up, Flamethrower versus the Harry Olds.
Harry Olds got the jump. Looks like Flamethrower was coming up around him at the 8th mile mark.
But the Harry Olds managed to hold him off till the finish, and that eliminates Flamethrower from the competition.
Up next, the Batmobile versus the Harry Olds.
They both took off like a pistol shot, and it looked like the Harry Olds was still pulling ahead at camera 2.
Brian managed to run away from me on the big end.
I've been trying to tell you, that car's illegal. Ain't supposed to have 2 motors.
Nope. Nowhere in here does it say you can't run 2 motors. They just can't equal out to more than 50,000 RPMs combined.
which eliminates the Batmobile from the competition.
Up next, the Camaro called McMullet versus my 1970 Stingray called the SOB.
Yep.
SOB got the jump, and it looked like you were getting up ahead of him.
But McMullet started coming around me at camera 2.
And then all hell broke loose.
I got called for crossing at about the 900-foot mark, and as you can see, the Camaro got under my back bumper, and then we were both just along for the ride.
It looked like your nose come across the finish line first.
Yeah, and from camera 3 I crossed. And then I was offered to look at camera 2, and I neglected to do so, and that's when I learned a very important lesson.
And what's that?
Always look at the other cameras, because camera 2 is at about the 600-foot mark. And if I had bothered to look, I'd have seen the McMullet crossed at about the 550-foot mark.
Which forced your front end to cross the center mark, or camera 3 picked it up?
But as I said, I learned a lesson, and McMullet moved on, and SOB went to the trailer.
And then there were 3. And first up is the Fireball versus the Harry Olds.
Yeah.
Harry Olds got the jump.
It looks like the Harry Olds crossed at about the 800-foot mark, and the Fireball said, "Get out of the way, I'm not moving for you."
And Mike bulldogs the Fireball across the finish line for the win, which means the last 2 cars in Heat 2 will be the Fireball versus McMullet.
Fireball was asleep at the line.
Well, something happened.
McMullet was leading at camera 2. Well, that ain't right.
Yeah, something happened there.
I don't think they're supposed to be in the same lane. McMullet had that race in the bag, and for some strange reason, he changed lanes and jumped in front of the Fireball.
Yeah, that's a terrible strategy. And that moves the Fireball to the final.
And our final will be between our winner from Heat 1, the 57 Chevy from the 724 called Ruby, versus the Fireball Camaro from the 412.
I'm running.
For all the gumballs.
Go.
Oh, looks like you got him.
The looks can be deceiving when you're standing at the starting line.
Well, you were still ahead of camera 2.
But then I came up out of the slot and lost power, and I watched that Camaro just walk away from me.
Which means Mike Trumpy in the Fireball Camaro is our Mother's Day Massacre champion. Let's go to the winner's circle.
And here's our winner.
Why lotto numbers?
Well, didn't you notice the baseball uniform he was wearing? He just came from a doubleheader where they had won both games. So Mikey pulled off a hat trick today.
And it gives him the Mother's Day Massacre trophy.
Well, folks, that's it. We hope you enjoyed the race. And if you did, subscribe and all that good stuff, because we can't get anywhere without you.
So until next time, I'm Randy Silvas,
And I'm Tony Molly.
and you've been watching
Slot Rods.
The answer is no, you ain't got a chance. She's out of your league, just let the girl dance. No creeping allowed, yo, you just get a glance. Don't try to swing game, yo, just let the girl dance. The answer is no, you ain't got a chance. She's out of your league, just let the girl dance. You can watch a show flow from a distance, but give us some space, son, let the girl dance.
Now that's a drag race.